Listen, welcome to midweek study. Welcome. We are back. We're excited to be here. I'm excited to be here because we are starting a new series for the month of October, dealing with favor. Everybody likes to talk about favor, but there are some things that we need to discuss and pull out. So I'm starting this off. So tonight, we're just going to give you an introduction, if you will, to favor. And every week after clergy, you're going to see us here walking through favor. Over the course of this year, we've tried to be very intentional about what we bring to you on Wednesday nights, right? So we've talked about kingdom and power and grace and hope and all of these things. Now we're at the place of favor. But Josh, I don't feel like I'm in favor. I know. That's why we have to talk about it. Because there are some things that we were taught and some things that we heard about favor that weren't necessarily true. Okay, so let's jump right into the word. There are a few things that I want to, make sure I point out to you. One of them being, how to differentiate the favor of men from favor of God, as well as where favor thrives and what favor means for your life. OK, so let's jump into that. We're going to Genesis 37. We're going to start at verse 3, and we're going to read through verse 9. OK, so all this month for Wednesday, we're going to be dealing with the story of Joseph. OK, we're going to be dealing with the story of Joseph. Genesis 37, verses 3 through 9. From the New International Version says like this. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made him an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream. And when he told his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, pay attention, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Verse 9. Then he had another dream to make matters worse. And he told his brothers, listen, he said, I had another dream. And this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. I really challenge you to read the story of Joseph, not just from what you know about it, but go back. It's a lot of ghetto stuff. It's scandal. It's it's a lot. But here in chapter 37, verse 3, what I want to do, I had never saw this before. It was in verse 3 that I saw the difference between favor of God and favor of man. So let's start here. Let's start by discussing what favor actually is. Favor by definition means to gain approval, acceptance, or special benefits or blessings. So in verses 3 through 9, we see that there are two types of favor. There is the favor of man, and then there's the favor of God. Now, here's what's interesting. Nowhere in the text, this one, the text before it, the text after, do we ever see God having a conversation with Jacob or Israel about Joseph being the favorite son. We see that nowhere. But Jacob here makes a decision to love Joseph more, not because of anything that Joseph did, but watch this, but because of what Joseph reminded Jacob about himself. What we see early on is that the favor of men really has nothing to do with you, but rather it has all to do with what having you close to them means for them. Um, Jacob's pride was in the fact that Joseph reminded him, or was proof that he still could. Because the text says in verse 3 that Jacob loved Joseph more than the other brothers because he had Joseph in his old age. Um, the favor of man is selfish, right? It's selfish and oftentimes manipulative. It causes discord, as well as it's only concerned about how it makes one look. It really has nothing to do with you. Jacob, Israel, exalted Joseph above his brothers because of what Joseph represented for him. Right? So all in all, favor from man makes it all about one and promotes the idea of elitism and superiority. Right? So my question then became, well, who said Joseph was ever favored by God? Where did we get that from? It wasn't until I read verses 3-9 again that I saw in verse 3, he was favored by his father. But when Joseph begins to talk about the dream, that's when we see the favor of God. Let's pay attention. Let's go back to verses 5-9. 5 says, Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. Verse 7, we were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while yours gathered around mine and bowed down to it. What was interesting here that for me was it was through the dream that we see Joseph being favored by God. Okay. What you don't see is a difference of action, though. Joseph was exalted by his father, but Joseph was also exalted by God in this dream. So we have the same action, but the motive and the intent is different. Pay attention to Joseph's dream. Joseph was exalted by his father because of how it made his father look. Joseph was exalted by God because of what was coming. You see the difference? Because God lives in the future and not right now, his choosing of Joseph to rise to the occasion had all to do with what the future held, not what the past reminded him of. Okay. So the difference between the two is that the favor of God has all to do with the big picture. You feel me knocking? And although the big picture includes you, it's not limited to just you. So that's the difference. So I then got a new working definition of favor. Favor by God. The favor of God is the intentional choice of God for the grand scheme of things. Okay. This is why men can snatch their favor back. The favor that they give to you, they can snatch back. But who can undo God's decision? Who can undo the choice of God? Okay. Type in the comments, favor is decided. Favor is not earned. Favor is decided. Okay. So we now know that the difference between the favor of men and the favor of God is that one makes it about me, while the other is for the big picture. It is all inclusive. Okay. So let's talk about when favor thrives, or where favor thrives. I want you to look at all of the problems being you causes. Look at every single problem or disruption that simply being you produced. Here's what I love about story. Without conflict, you don't have a story. So it's interesting that favor thrives in conflict. Favor thrives where there is trouble. Favor thrives where there is problem. You don't believe me? Let's go back to the text. In the text, verses 37, in chapter 37, the Bible says that they hated their brother. They hated him. Why? Why did they hate him? Let's study. They hated him because he was the different one. He was the one that had dream. He was the one that was the favorite. He was the one with the different mama. His mom was Rachel, and she was actually the loved of Jacob. Jacob didn't really care about Leah. He worked 14 years to get Rachel, right? So favor thrives wherever there's a problem. Favor thrives, watch this, wherever there's jealousy. Wherever you see jealousy, you'll find favor. Favor is literally the antithesis of jealousy. You cannot have favor where there is no difference. If everybody's the same, there's no need for favor. Difference comes to play for a very simple reason. You don't need answers if you don't have problems. What good is an answer without a problem? Favor works so well in trouble because you don't have conflict without contrast. If there are not opposing things, there's no real conflict. Difference then becomes the foundation of jealousy. They hated Joseph because he was different than them, right? So difference then becomes the foundation of jealousy, but it also serves, watch this, as the qualifier for favor. Favor is for the different. Type that in the comments. Favor is for the different. So are you different? And can God use your difference? Here's something that I want you to get used to and accustomed to. I know they told you favor ain't fair, but let me tell you what favor really is. Favor is always, the favored always stand out. The favored don't fit in. Okay, hear me. This is just the soft opening to favor. This is the introduction to favor. The favored never fit in. So if you're wondering why you're always the one that's picked on or picked out, or why you're the one that's always called out, or why you're the one that's always made to feel different, favor. But this favor, let me help you. God does not create superstars. He creates solutions. So you're not favored to become celebrity. No, you're favored to be put in the place of problem so that your solution can shine. That's the whole point of favor. The whole point of this is God is a builder. He is an architect, man. He's an architect. There is nothing that God does without a blueprint or plan. Okay? Because God is Alpha and Omega, finisher and the beginner and finisher, the author and finisher of our faith, he's already at the end of this thing. He sees how this thing ends up. So what he does is he comes to our now and he says, hey, I need you. I need you. I need you. Not because nobody else is important. Favor is the symbol of trust. Can God trust you? That's going to determine if you get favored by God. This is really not a popularity contest. It's not a matter of being God's favorite. God doesn't have a favorite. He's no respecter of persons. There's a scripture in the Bible that says this: many are called, but few are chosen. I often wonder why few are chosen. It's not because they are the only option. It's because they are the trusted. Have you ever considered, we say, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? You would think that Abraham was an only child, that Isaac was an only child, that Jacob was an only child. They were not. Abraham had two other brothers. Isaac had Esau, or Jacob had Esau. Isaac had Ishmael. So it was not the fact that they were the only option, but they could be trusted. They could be trusted. The favor of God is traceable. I want you to always remember that. The favor of God is traceable. Although we're talking about the story of Joseph, favor does not start with Joseph. In fact, favor starts with his great granddaddy, Abraham, right? And it continues to come. And it does not mean that these are perfect people. Let me help you, everybody out. Favor does not mean that they got everything right, that they were perfect, or that they always made the right decision. No, they could just be trusted. We always talking about how sweet it is to trust in God, but can God trust you? Okay. So going back to this idea of many are called, but few are chosen. This is the revelation God gave me. Show me this house. And he said, Josh, in the house, there are many walls, but how many of those walls are load-bearing walls? Not every wall in the house is a load-bearing wall. You have a lot of walls. So that means the load-bearing wall is decided upon by the architect or the builder, because the load-bearing wall is going to hold the load. It's going to make sure that this stays up. What I found out about favor is that favor does not make me a celebrity. Favor only reveals the amount of responsibility I have. Favor, what we call favor and what favor really is, are two separate entities. Favor does not mean, hear me, favor does not mean you're God's favorite. Favor simply means I'm God's trusted. And that God can trust me to carry this thing through so that the big picture is ultimately fulfilled. Are you okay with playing a part in the big picture? We always want everything to be about us, about our ego, about what it is we did, how we showed up, and make me the celebrity, make me famous. That's not the goal of favor. Favor is not pretty. It's weighty, and as you always hear me say, favor is very ghetto. But it's all of those things because the favored must be the responsible. So when you go through the text of Joseph's story and you start picking away the pieces of why Joseph was chosen, why Jacob was chosen, why Isaac was chosen, why Abraham was chosen, it was because they were responsible. They were responsible. And God knew that in the grand scheme of things, when it came time to handing out power, they could be trusted with it. So favor, again, by definition, is simply the intentional choice of God for the grand scheme of things. All of us are pieces of this puzzle. Okay? I want you to think about and consider, if you consider yourself favored of God, why did God choose me? I want to leave you with this sobering thought. Why did God look down among all of your family, among all of the people that you know, and say, I want to use you? I want you to see yourself more than what you are. Don't focus on the actions or the feelings of what those actions bring. Focus on the intention of God. Why did God Or what is it about me that God saw and said, I want to choose you? I want us to really, really, really think about that. If ever you are using your favor to compete, to make yourself higher than one, although Joseph was exalted above his brothers, watch this, he was not better than his brothers. He was elevated because in that elevation, he brought his brothers with him. It wasn't I'm elevated, so forget the rest of y'all. And that's how you determine if, again, you're favored by men or you're favored by God. Because the favor of God will never allow you to exclude anybody from the table. Favor is restorative in nature. Favor is always about, even Joseph's mother says, the Lord remembered me. He brought me back. He heard my disgrace because she couldn't have children. He heard my disgrace. And because I was then able to conceive Joseph and have him, that said to me that God remembered me. He put me back where I was supposed to be. I promise you, what you will see throughout this whole story, you'll see a lot of division. You'll see a lot of jealousy going back to his parents, his grandparents, and his great-grandparents. You'll see this common theme of jealousy. You'll see this common theme of division and difference. But what you will always see about favor is that favor from God is always restorative. So ask yourself, can God trust me to restore? Or am I just wanting favor so I can look like something? That's the challenge to you. Hopefully you've learned something throughout this Bible study that made you question, that made you want to pick up your word and go study. That's the whole point. It's so that you go study, because the more you know, the less likely you are to become deceived. And that is our goal with all of this. It is so that you cannot be deceived. There are a lot of things happening in the world. There are a lot of things going on. What we as a church, as a ministry, as a body of believers never want you to do is succumb to ignorance or misinformation. So study with us. We're going to be talking about Joseph this entire month, so you know what to study. So come, interact with us, and we'll catch you next time. The prayer information is on the screen. The giving information is on the screen. We need your help and support financially to do all of the things that we are doing, and the things that we want to do in bigger and better ways to serve the community and to serve you at large. So you'll see all of that giving information. But the first thing you can give is your life. God is concerned about your life more than he is your money. Okay? Money answers all things, but what good is money without a life? So give your life to God. All you have to do is believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that God has raised Jesus from the dead, and you're saved. You're saved. The process has begun. Don't try to circumvent your process because it doesn't look or feel pretty. Stay in the game, champ. I promise you, if you see this through, you'll see the favor of God is simply a reminder that God trusts you. All right, until next time, we're signing off, and I'll see you soon.